The laughter came from upstairs. The kind of laughter that didn't belong in a house that had buried a son only a week ago. I stood in the hallway staring at the closed door of my bedroom. My bedroom. Behind it, voices murmured, furniture scraped, and I could hear the clinking of glasses. When the door opened, Vanessa appeared perfectly dressed in a soft beige sweater and gold earrings that caught the evening light. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "You'll need to move your things downstairs, Richard," she said, motioning toward the man beside her, her father Howard, who was already carrying one of my boxes. "We've decided to make this room the new master suite for my parents. It's closer to the balcony, better light for Mom's meditation." I looked past her shoulder. My wife's old photo, the one of her holding baby Michael, was gone. In its place hung a framed print that read, "New energy, new life." Howard gave a thin smile. "It's time to freshen the place up. You understand, right?" Vanessa folded her arms. "You'll sign the property transfer tomorrow, or you can pack tonight. Your choice." Behind them, her brother Kyle laughed softly, filming something on his phone. "Come on, old man," he said. "Smile for the new era." I didn't move. The humiliation settled on me like dust, slow, suffocating familiar. But I didn't speak. I just gave a small nod, the kind that looks like surrender, but isn't. In the corner, my bonsai tree caught a beam of fading light. I turned toward it, touching its leaves, and whispered under my breath, "Let them think they've won." The next morning, the house no longer smelled like home. The air was filled with Vanessa's lavender candles and the citrus-scented cleaner her mother used. I carried my clothes down to the guest room in the basement, a space that had once been storage for tools and old paintings. Every step down those stairs felt like a demotion in my own life. At breakfast, the family sat together, Vanessa at the head of the table, now her parents on either side, and Kyle scrolling on his phone. I stood by the counter until she glanced up. "Dad, hail," she said, that polished influencer voice slipping through. "Can you grab the extra plates? We're reorganizing the energy around meals too." I handed her the plates and sat at the edge of the table. My old chair was gone, replaced with a stool. "Don't take it personally," she added. "It's just better flow." Howard chuckled. "Man's lucky we let him stay at all," he muttered. I smiled faintly, poured myself coffee, and let the remark die in the air. The truth is, words like that only have power when you let them echo. By afternoon, a moving truck arrived. New furniture came in sleek and soulless. My late son's pictures were taken down and replaced with posters of yoga poses and crystals. When I asked about the framed portrait of Michael and me from his graduation, Vanessa said it didn't fit the new aesthetic. She spent the evening walking through the house, directing decorators like a queen reclaiming her throne. Her mother rearranged the china cabinet, her father opened my liquor shelf, and Kyle streamed a video titled "Transforming Grief into Growth." They called this healing. At dinner, the humiliation peaked. I ate quietly while they talked about rebranding the property as Hale Wellness Mansion, a luxury retreat for emotional detox. "I think Michael would have wanted this," Vanessa said brightly. "Turning pain into purpose." Howard nodded. "You've got the marketing mind, sweetheart." I looked at my plate, the roast chicken untouched. "Purpose," I murmured. "Yes, that's one word for it." Kyle laughed. "Don't worry, old man. We'll name one of the rooms after you." Their laughter filled the room again. I felt something inside me go perfectly still. Not broken. Not angry, just still. After dinner, Vanessa pulled me aside near the staircase. "Look, Richard, we all grieve differently. I need space to move forward." "You living here, it's complicated." I studied her face, the calm cruelty behind the rehearsed empathy. "Complicated for who?" "For me," she said flatly. "You can stay in the guest room until the paperwork's settled. But please don't make this harder than it has to be." I nodded once. "I won't." That night I stood alone in the garden. The lights from the mansion glowed soft and golden through the windows, flickering behind drawn curtains. I could hear laughter again, her family celebrating something upstairs. In my pocket was a small brass key worn smooth with time. Michael had given it to me years ago when we finished restoring the house together. "Dad, if you ever need help, trust Price," he'd said. I never asked what it meant, just smiled and tucked the key away. Now holding it under the moonlight, I realized how cold the metal had become. I walked back inside, passing the framed quote in the hallway. Let go. Move on. Forgive. They wanted me quiet. Fine. I'd be quiet, but silence has its own kind of power, the kind that grows roots under anger and waits for the right season to bloom. Before heading to the basement, I paused by the door of my old bedroom. It was closed. Laughter still coming from behind it. My room, my house, my son's legacy occupied, rewritten, repainted. I smiled faintly and whispered to no one in particular. They've mistaken patience for weakness. Downstairs in the dim light of the guest room, I set the key on the nightstand next to an old photograph of Michael and me. Outside, thunder rumbled over the Savannah River, low and distant. They think they've taken everything I said softly, but they don't know what Michael left behind. The storm rolled closer. I closed my eyes and let the sound of the rain drown the echo of their laughter. Tomorrow I would find out what that brass key really opened. The house looked different in daylight. New curtains, pale and sheer, replaced the heavy velvet ones my wife once chose. The scent of citrus polish lingered in every hallway. Upstairs, voices and footsteps moved like they owned the place. Because now apparently they did. At breakfast, Vanessa was already seated at the head of the table sipping green juice. Her parents were beside her, talking about repainting the dining room in calming tones. Kyle sat at the far end editing one of his videos. I poured coffee in silence and reached for the newspaper. "Dad," Hale Vanessa said, with that bright fall sweetness. "Would you mind grabbing the extra plates? We're reorganizing the setup a bit." I fetched them without a word. My old chair was gone again, replaced by a stool near the window. I sat there quietly as they discussed weekend plans for the brand. Howard leaned back, gesturing with his fork. "You know, Vanessa, you could really turn this into something. People love stories of healing." Celia nodded, especially from a strong widow who rebuilt her life. I set my cup down. "You're turning grief into content," I said softly. The room fell silent for a moment. Vanessa's eyes narrowed just slightly. "No, Richard," she said. "I'm turning pain into purpose. There's a difference." "Of course," I murmured. After breakfast, the mansion filled with activity. Boxes arrived, labeled studio lights and aromatherapy sets. Kyle directed workers to move furniture for better filming angles. Howard supervised a handyman measuring my study for open space optimization. By noon, the portraits of my son were gone. When I asked, Vanessa said they'd been moved for energy balance. Energy balance. My son's face replaced by yoga posters and Himalayan salt lamps. That afternoon, I walked through what used to be Michael's home office. His desk had been cleared. The photo of him shaking hands with his first client gone. In its place sat Vanessa's laptop and a ring light. She looked up briefly as I entered. "Richard," she said, smiling without warmth, "you can use the basement office for your things. We're streamlining this space." I nodded. "Of course. Wouldn't want to interrupt your healing process." She blinked, unsure if I was mocking her. Then she turned back to her screen. By evening, they called me for dinner again. The table glowed under soft light, the food expensive but tasteless. Howard raised his glass. "To new beginnings," he said. "To the Hale Wellness Mansion," Vanessa added. "A space for transformation." Kyle smirked. "Even the old man gets a fresh start." They laughed. I smiled faintly, cutting my steak slowly. Transformation, I said. That's one word for it. Vanessa leaned forward, her tone shifting. You know, Richard, the property taxes on this house are steep. Michael always struggled with them. It's better if I handle everything from now on. I'm sure you'll do what's best, I said. I always do. She took another sip of wine. And don't worry about finding a new place. I can help you look. There's a senior apartment complex near the river. Quiet, cozy, perfect for someone your age. Her mother nodded eagerly. It would be good for you. Less stress, more community. Howard smiled. A man's got to know when to let go. I put down my knife and fork. You're right, Howard. I do know when to let go. They all relaxed a little, mistaking calm for surrender. Later that night, I packed a few belongings and moved them into the small guest room by the garden. It wasn't exile, not really. It was distance. Distance helps you see people more clearly. While sorting through my desk drawers, I found one of Michael's old notebooks. Between its pages there was a folded scrap of paper, his handwriting strong, confident. If anything ever happens to me, Dad will know what to do. Everything's under P. I stared at the letter for a long time. The letter P, Price. I remembered the lawyer Michael had mentioned years ago, David Price. A sharp man, calm as stone, the kind who handled things cleanly. The next morning, Vanessa knocked on my door. She held a folder in one hand and a rehearsed smile on her face. Morning, Richard. I thought we could handle some paperwork today. Just signatures, nothing stressful. I took the folder and opened it slowly. The pages were thick, covered in legal language. The heading read, Transfer of Authority for Estate Maintenance. At the bottom of the first page, a small note in fine print caught my eye. Subject to pending trust review. Interesting. Vanessa crossed her arms. It's just formality. You sign, I manage. It's better for everyone. I looked up. Better for you, certainly. Her expression tightened. Please don't start this again. I'm trying to do the right thing. Then you should keep trying, I said quietly, closing the folder. I'll think about it. She frowned. Don't take too long. The longer you wait, the more complicated this becomes. I've never been afraid of complications. Her tone hardened. You're not getting any younger, Richard. Maybe it's time to accept that your part in this family is done. I didn't answer. I simply nodded, walked past her, and stepped into the garden. The sun was low, casting long golden rays across the magnolia trees. My bonsai sat on the railing, small and patient. I reached out, adjusting one of its branches carefully. They think patience is weakness, I whispered. They have no idea. Back inside, I opened my laptop and searched for the number of David Price. His office still appeared on the Savannah registry. Same name, same address. I wrote down the contact on a slip of paper and placed it next to the folder Vanessa had given me. Then I picked up Michael's note again, tracing my finger along the ink. Everything's under P. That night, Vanessa hosted another dinner for her wellness team. Music, laughter, champagne. I stayed in my room listening to the hum of conversation above. Around midnight, when the noise faded, I went upstairs and paused by my old study. The door was locked now. I smiled faintly and turned back toward the stairs. They believed they'd erased my name from this house. But Michael had built it with me. Every beam, every wall, every inch of this place remembered who it belonged to. Before turning in, I opened my notebook and wrote 4 words across a clean-page trust review. It's my leverage. I closed it, set it beside the brass key, and turned off the light. Outside, the cicadas sang under the heavy Savannah night. The mansion above me glowed faintly alive, with the sound of false laughter and borrowed confidence. And in the quiet of the guest room, I smiled. Let them laugh. They were already inside a story they didn't know I was writing. Sunday afternoon sunlight poured through the tall windows, warm and golden, touching every corner of a house that no longer felt like mine. Vanessa had organized a family dinner, the first since Michael's funeral, to celebrate new beginnings. The table was long dressed with linen and flowers, but there was one thing missing: Michael's seat. They'd placed a crystal bowl there instead, filled with white stones. "Symbol of peace," Vanessa said when I asked. Howard sat at the head of the table, laughing too loudly. Celia fussed over the wine. Kyle held up his phone, recording the whole thing for what he called content. I was given a spot at the far end near the kitchen door. A stool again, not a chair. "Dad Hale," Vanessa said, smiling across the table. "I hope you don't mind sitting there. It's closer to the serving area, and we want to keep the energy balanced." I picked up my glass. "I've gotten used to balance," I said. Dinner began with small talk that tasted like poison wrapped in sugar. Howard praised the mansion's potential for branding. Celia talked about turning the garden into a meditation space. Kyle explained how their followers loved the healing journey narrative. Vanessa beamed. The Hale Wellness Mansion is officially launching next month. We'll offer retreats, mindfulness coaching, private yoga sessions. It's exactly what Michael would have wanted. He'd have loved seeing his home turned into a business, I said quietly. Her eyes flickered toward me, then away. We're honoring him in our way. You honor him in yours. Kyle smirked. Maybe you could do bonsai classes for seniors. Healing through tiny trees. It's on brand. Laughter rolled around the table like cheap thunder. I smiled faintly, cutting my chicken. Michael used to say real healing doesn't need an audience. Vanessa's fork froze mid-air. "Excuse me, nothing," I said, taking another bite. "Just remembering something he told me." Howard cleared his throat, breaking the tension. "Let's not ruin dinner with old memories." I looked down at my plate. The silence that followed was heavier than grief. After dessert, Vanessa stood and raised her glass. "To Michael," she said brightly. "To moving on, to building something new, to keeping his spirit alive." Everyone echoed to Michael, except me. I lifted my glass, but didn't drink. The crystal clinked hollow and cold. When the plates were cleared, Vanessa placed a folder on the table and slid it toward me. "We need to talk about logistics," she said. "There are still some documents pending: house maintenance, title transfers, insurance updates. Just formalities." I opened it, scanning quickly. Her lawyer had redlined every clause that might protect me. I stopped at the familiar phrase, "subject to pre-existing trust conditions." She hadn't noticed it. Or maybe she thought I wouldn't. "Looks complicated," I said. "It's not," she replied. "You just need to sign so everything stays smooth. You'll still have a place here temporarily." Howard leaned forward. "The taxes on this property are brutal, Richard." "Vanessa's just being responsible." Celia chimed in sweetly. "You've done enough. It's time to let the younger generation handle things." Kyle smirked again. "Yeah, Grandpa. Pass the torch before you burn yourself with it." The table burst into laughter. I let it happen. Then I said evenly, "You're right. Michael once told me fires always show who built with wood and who built with steel." No one spoke after that. I excused myself and began clearing plates, ignoring Howard's nervous chuckle. "You're a good man, Richard," he said. "You know when to let go." I've let go of less important things before I answered. When the room emptied, I carried the dishes into the kitchen, rinsed them under running water, and stood there listening to the muffled voices upstairs. I could hear Vanessa telling her mother I was getting easier to manage. I dried my hands, went to my old study, now Kyle's studio, and opened the drawer I'd locked years ago. Inside was a silver USB drive, small, scratched, but intact. I had backed up everything Michael and I ever worked on: house blueprints, ownership papers, and the first draft of the Hale Family Trust. I turned it over in my palm. "Still here," I whispered. "So am I." I slipped it into my pocket, shut off the light, and stepped into the hall. Vanessa appeared at the doorway. Looking for something, she asked. "Just memories," I said. "You should delete some," she said. "They take up too much space." "Some memories delete themselves," I replied. "Others don't." Her lips tightened. She stepped aside, watching me as I walked past. Later, I sat in the guest room with my laptop open. The screen flickered to life as I entered Michael's old password, Legacy 1978. The folders opened one by one, blueprints, legal forms, correspondence with David Price. My pulse steadied. The framework was all there. I just needed to confirm it. Outside, laughter drifted down the hall again. Kyle's voice carried, "He won't fight back. He's too old for this." I leaned back in my chair, letting their arrogance fill the silence like smoke. They didn't understand that patience wasn't the absence of power. It was the perfect disguise for it. I took out a small notebook, wrote a line across the first page, Phase 1, retrieve originals from Price. Then beneath it, don't show anger. Let them underestimate you. The next morning, I joined them for coffee. Vanessa was glowing with her usual curated calm. "Morning," she said. "Sleep well." "Like a man without a mortgage," I said, and she laughed, not realizing what I meant. The day went on, and by evening the house was alive again with their false joy. I stayed mostly in the garden, trimming my bonsai while the sun sank low. The branches bent under my careful touch, reshaped, redirected. That night, before turning in, I stood at the window of my small room and looked up at the mansion glowing above. Every light was on like a stage before a performance. "They think they're in control," I murmured. "But the show's already written." I closed the notebook, slid the USB drive beside it, and smiled to myself, a small, steady smile. Let them believe they'd won. Let them laugh at the old man trimming trees. The quieter they got, the closer they'd be to hearing the sound of their own downfall. The morning sun came sharp through the magnolia trees, slicing across the porch like a blade. I was trimming one of my bonsai when Vanessa stepped outside, her heels clicking against the wood. She wasn't alone. A man in a dark suit followed, tall, polished, with the kind of smile that only lawyers wear. "Richard," Vanessa said sweetly, "this is Mr. Lucas, my legal advisor. He's here to help finalize some of the estate paperwork." "Nothing complicated." The lawyer shook my hand, firm and cold. "If we can get your signature today, Mr. Hale, the transition will be simple. Otherwise, the tax situation could get messy." I set down my scissors, wiped my hands on a cloth. "I've always been good with messy." Vanessa's smile flickered. "You don't have to make this difficult." "I'm not, just cautious." She led me inside into what used to be my study. It had been transformed into a minimalist office, soft white walls, a new desk, and the smell of lavender candles. The folder on the desk was thick, its papers neatly clipped. She gestured toward the chair. "Sit, please. Let's handle this like adults." Howard stood near the window, arms folded, silent muscle behind her words. Kyle leaned against the doorframe, recording something on his phone. "Do you mind I asked?" Kyle grinned. "Transparency, right? For everyone's peace of mind." Vanessa took the folder, opened it, and pointed at the bottom of the page. "Right here, Richard. One signature. You'll still live here temporarily, but it makes everything legal. I read the title, Transfer of Authority for Estate Maintenance." The words crawled down the page like ants. At the bottom, in fine print, I saw it again. Subject to pre-existing trust conditions. "Interesting clause," I said, tapping it lightly. Vanessa's tone sharpened. "It's standard. You don't need to worry about that." "I tend to worry about things people tell me not to," I said. Howard stepped forward. "Look, son, we're just trying to help you. You can't handle all this property, not at your age. Vanessa's making sure the house stays in the family. In the family, I repeated. That's comforting. Celia entered from the hallway with a tray of tea. Let's not make this unpleasant. We all want peace. Vanessa smiled tightly. Dad Hale, you told me last week you trusted me. So trust me now. Sign it. Her voice was calm, rehearsed the tone of someone who believed the scene was already finished. I picked up the pen, turning it in my fingers. You said it was for taxes. Yes. And once I sign, you'll handle everything. Exactly. I nodded slowly. Then I'll think about it overnight. My hands aren't steady this morning. Vanessa's smile froze. There's no reason to wait. There's always a reason, I said. Sometimes it just takes time to see it. Howard sighed, his patience thinning. Richard, you're making this harder than it has to be. I placed the pen back on the folder and looked at each of them. No, Howard. I'm making it fair. Vanessa's voice dropped to a low hiss. You're being stubborn. You're lucky we even let you stay. I rose slowly from the chair. Then maybe luck has better taste than I thought. Howard's jaw tightened. We'll come back tomorrow. They left their footsteps sharp against the hardwood. The lawyer gave me a curt nod before following. The room fell quiet again. I stood there for a while, the scent of lavender hanging heavy in the air. Then I pulled out my phone and took a picture of the open folder, every page, every header. Zooming in, I captured the firm's logo and document number at the bottom proof. In the silence, I sent the photo to an old contact. The message was simple. David Price. Still at the same office. A few minutes later, the reply came. Yes. Come tomorrow morning. Your son's instructions are waiting. I sat down slowly, the words sinking in. Your son's instructions. The rain started outside, soft against the window. I opened Michael's old notebook again, the one with his neat handwriting on the first page. If something happens to me, Dad will know what to do. He had known. Somehow he'd known exactly what she'd try to do. I spent the rest of the afternoon pretending to read, pretending to nap, pretending to be the quiet old man they thought I was. From upstairs came the muffled sounds of Vanessa's laughter. Kyle's voice narrating into his camera, Howard's bassy hum. They believed the story belonged to them, now that I'd been reduced to a footnote. After dinner, Vanessa knocked on my door again. Just reminding you, she said, her voice syrupy. Tomorrow we'll finish the paperwork. I'll have Mr. Lucas bring new copies. I smiled. Thank you for the reminder. Her eyes narrowed. You'll sign right, I said I'd think about it. I'm still thinking. She tilted her head. Don't take too long. You're not getting younger, Richard. I met her gaze steady. Age has its advantages. Patience, for one. She huffed, turned, and walked away, her perfume trailing behind her. When the sound of her heels faded, I unlocked my desk drawer and took out the brass key Michael had given me. I laid it next to the photos and whispered, You were right, son. The game's not over yet. That night, thunder rolled across the river. I sat in the dark, the glow of my laptop lighting the small room. Michael's folder was still open from before. I scrolled until I found the file labeled Hale Trust Doc.pdf. The first line read, Primary Beneficiary, Richard L. Hale. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. Everything was still under my name, untouched, protected by the trust Michael had set up years ago. Outside, lightning flashed across the windows, painting the garden in white for a second. I whispered to the storm, They wanted a signature. They'll get one. I closed the laptop, the faint smile never leaving my face. Upstairs, laughter echoed again, sharp and careless. They think they're building a legacy, I murmured. But they're just writing my proof. The thunder came again, louder this time, rolling over the roof like applause. The rain had stopped by morning, leaving the streets of Savannah shining like glass. I drove my old Buick downtown, the tires hissing on wet pavement. The brass key sat in my coat pocket, heavier than ever. When I reached the office building, Price and Hartman, LLP, I parked beneath the moss-draped oaks and took a deep breath before stepping inside. The receptionist looked up as I entered. "Mr. Hale," she asked softly. "Mr. Price is expecting you." She led me down a quiet hallway lined with framed certificates and photos of courtroom victories. The air smelled of coffee and polished wood. When the door opened, David Price stood from behind his desk, older than I remembered, but with the same calm eyes. "Richard," he said, shaking my hand firmly, "you finally came. You sound like you've been waiting for me." He nodded. 5 years. Michael said you would." The words hit like a slow echo. I sat down and Price pulled open a drawer, revealing a sealed envelope marked with red wax. "Your son left specific instructions," he said. "He was worried things might get complicated." "Complicated is one word for it," I murmured. He handed me the envelope, but his gaze held mine. "Everything you need to know about your position and about them is in here. But I want to explain something first." I tore open the seal. Inside were several documents, a trust agreement, notarized signatures, and a small flash drive labeled Hale Estate. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled out the first page. "The Hale Family Trust," Price said. "Created 6 years ago. Your son moved every major asset into it, the house, the investments, the company shares. Michael was a secondary beneficiary, but you, Richard, are the primary trustee. Upon his death, everything reverted to you." I looked up. "So this house, this mess, it's mine, legally and entirely. Vanessa never had ownership. Michael designed it that way to protect you." I leaned back, trying to take it in. "He never told me. He said it was better you didn't know unless something happened." The room seemed smaller suddenly. My fingers brushed the brass key in my pocket. He always planned ahead. Price nodded. He trusted you to do the same. He opened a folder and placed another set of papers in front of me. Michael also left an addendum, proof that Vanessa misused joint funds. He'd discovered several unauthorized transfers into a shell account, all in her name. He slid a USB drive across the desk. "That's everything: screenshots, bank statements, even text messages between her and her brother. He wanted you to have it if she ever tried to challenge the trust." For a long time I couldn't speak. I just stared at the evidence, my son's quiet, methodical handwriting on the labels. "He saw this coming," I said finally. Price's tone softened. He loved her once, but he knew she couldn't resist trying to take control. He wanted to make sure she couldn't take you down with her. I nodded slowly. He knew her better than I did. Outside, thunder rumbled again, low and distant. "What do I do now?" I asked. "That depends on how you want this to end," Price said. "You could file for eviction immediately. The court would support you, or you could wait. Let them make their next move. Michael believed their own greed would undo them faster than any court." I smiled faintly. Sounds like something he'd say. Price leaned back, studying me. "So, evict them, or wait, I said. "Let them feel safe first. Let them laugh." He nodded, folding his hands. "Then I'll keep everything ready. Just say the word." He reached into the desk again and produced a smaller envelope sealed with Michael's initials. "One more thing. He left this for you personally." I took it carefully, breaking the seal. Inside was a letter written in Michael's handwriting, steady and neat. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and you've seen what she's capable of. Don't let anger take you down with her. Use what I've built. Protect yourself." I left enough for you to start over and enough proof to end the lies. Remember, revenge isn't power. Control is." The words blurred slightly before my eyes. I folded the letter, slid it back into its envelope, and placed it against my chest pocket. "He was still protecting me," I said quietly. "He always intended to," Price replied. I stood staring out the rain-streaked window. Cars passed below ordinary lives, continuing while mine felt suspended between past and reckoning. "Keep everything where it is," I said finally. "And send me digital copies of the trust documents. If they want to play lawyer, I'll show them what real paperwork looks like." Price smiled. "Understood." Before I left, he handed me a second flash drive. Security footage recordings, timestamps, all the proof you could ever need. Michael made backups for everything. I slipped it into my coat. He really thought of everything. Price walked me to the door. He knew you'd know when to act. "I'll know," I said. The rain had started again when I stepped outside. The city glistened under the soft gray light, every puddle reflecting the past and what was coming. I sat in my car, opened the small envelope again, and reread Michael's final line. "Don't fight with anger. Fight with proof." As I started the engine, the phone buzzed with a message from Vanessa. "Did you sign the documents yet? We can't wait forever." I looked at the screen for a long time, then typed 2 words back. "Almost ready." The rain fell harder, streaking the windshield like ink lines across paper. I smiled to myself, a quiet, steady smile. "They wanted a signature," I whispered. "They'll get one." I drove off the city, fading behind me, headlights cutting through the storm like truth through noise. The storm broke just after sunset. Lightning flashed over the river, and thunder rolled so close it rattled the windows. Upstairs, Vanessa was live-streaming another healing session, her voice echoing through the halls. "Grief is energy," she said to her audience. "We can transform it into power." I sat in the dim light of my small room laptop, opened the flash drive from Price plugged in. The screen glowed with folder names Michael had labeled himself: Trust, Assets, Evidence, VH, Schedule, Release. That last one made me pause. Inside were pre-programmed emails, each one timed for automatic delivery. Michael had set them to go out if the trust wasn't accessed for a year. I smiled. My son had planned for every kind of silence. I adjusted the clock settings, reset the triggers. Within 24 hours, Vanessa and her brother would start receiving messages from Michael. At 9 that night, her live stream froze mid-sentence. She stared at the camera, confused, as a notification popped onto her laptop screen behind her. Message from Michael Hale, scheduled delivery. For a moment, she didn't move. Her viewers saw it too. "That's not real?" she stammered, ending the stream abruptly. I could hear her pacing upstairs, muttering to Kyle, her voice rising in panic. "Someone's messing with me. Did you see that I took a slow sip of tea watching the rain smear the window?" "Yes," I whispered. He did. By morning, the house felt uneasy. Vanessa avoided me at breakfast. Kyle stayed glued to his phone, scrolling through system settings. Howard grumbled about electronic nonsense, while Celia kept crossing herself, whispering prayers. Halfway through the day, Vanessa came downstairs with her laptop in hand. "Richard," she said sharply, "did you do something to our Wi-Fi? I don't even know the password," I said, trimming one of my bonsai. She frowned. "Then explain this." She turned the screen toward me. Another message had arrived overnight again from Michael's old work email. "Some things are never really yours, Vanessa." Her voice trembled. "He's dead. This is sick. Maybe it's just guilt finding a signal," I said. Her eyes flashed with anger. "You think this is funny?" "No," I said, setting down my scissors. "I think it's fitting." That night, I set the next part in motion. In Michael's files, there was a program for the mansion's smart home system. It controlled the lights, the speakers, the thermostat, I uploaded a simple playlist, a single track labeled Legacy MP3. At exactly midnight, the song began playing through the entire house. The same song Michael used to play when he worked late in his office. I woke to shouting. Vanessa's voice echoed down the hall. Turn it off, turn it off. The lights were flickering on and off in rhythm with the music. Howard stumbled out of his room, pale and shaking. Celia was crying, whispering Michael's name. I walked upstairs, calm, steady. Problems, Vanessa spun on me, eyes wide. You're doing this. You and your creepy tech tricks. I looked around at the flashing lights and music filling the room. I couldn't even work the thermostat last week. Stop lying, she screamed. Howard grabbed her arm. Sweetheart, calm down. The lights cut out suddenly, plunging us into darkness. The music faded to silence. Then one soft note echoed through the house, Michael's voice from an old recording. Trust is everything. Celia gasped. Vanessa covered her mouth. No, she whispered. No, it can't be. The system shut down. Silence. The next morning, Vanessa called an electrician and demanded a full inspection. The technician ran a scan and found that the user account controlling the system was labeled M. Hale Trust. Vanessa's face drained of color. He's haunting me, she said under her breath. Howard muttered, or someone's trying to. I stayed quiet, letting the fear do its work. Fear is the best courtroom. It makes people confess before the judge even enters. That evening, she cornered me in the kitchen. I know it's you, she said, voice shaking. You're trying to make me look crazy. You don't need my help for that, I said softly. She slammed her hand against the counter. Why are you doing this? I looked her in the eye. I'm not doing anything. Maybe Michael's reminding you of something you'd rather forget. Her lip trembled. You think you're clever, don't you? You think you can scare me? I don't need to scare you, I said. The truth will do that. That night, another email arrived for her, this time with an attachment. I knew because I saw her run downstairs in her robe, shouting into the phone. Where did this come from? The email's subject read, Hale Estate Trust PA PDF. Inside was the full trust document, complete with her name excluded. By morning, the whole house was on edge. Howard and Kyle argued in the foyer about whether to confront me. Celia refused to come downstairs. The air was thick with suspicion and paranoia. I spent the afternoon in the garden, pruning the magnolia tree near the fence. I could see Vanessa through the window, pacing her phone glued to her ear. She was talking to someone, probably a lawyer. The brass key hung from my pocket, warm from the sun. I turned it over in my hand, thinking about Michael's note. If you ever need help, trust Price. By nightfall, they stopped pretending to be polite. Kyle found me in the kitchen and muttered, You should leave before something happens. Something's already happening, I said. You just don't understand it yet. Howard appeared behind him. We know you're behind this. The emails, the lights, everything. You want to scare her into giving you the house. I looked at him steadily. The house was never hers to give. Howard stepped closer, red-faced. You'd better watch yourself, old man. I smiled slightly. I already am. They left in a fury, slamming doors, their voices rising upstairs. I heard Vanessa sob once, sharp and angry. Later, when the mansion was finally quiet, I sat by the window and typed one message to Price. They're starting to unravel. Prepare the next step. His reply came almost immediately. Understood. The will reading is scheduled for Tuesday at 2 p.m. They've been notified. I looked at the email and closed my laptop. The rain had started again, steady and calm. Upstairs, the lights in Michael's old office flickered once my doing this time, and I whispered to the dark, You've done your part, son. Now it's my turn. Outside, thunder rolled again, softer now, like applause from somewhere far away. The letter from Price arrived early Monday morning, tucked neatly in a cream-colored envelope. Vanessa found it first lying on the kitchen counter beside the coffee maker. I heard the sharp tear of paper, followed by her voice rising in disbelief. "A will reading this week. He already left everything to me." I stirred my coffee slowly. "Then I suppose you have nothing to worry about." She glared at me, the edges of the letter crumpling in her hand. "You did this, didn't you?" "I didn't know the dead needed my permission to speak," I said. Her father, Howard, leaned in from the hallway. "It's just formality, sweetheart. We'll go in, listen to whatever that lawyer says, then get back to normal." Celia nodded quickly. "Yes, don't let him rattle you." But Vanessa didn't answer. She just folded the letter with shaking hands and walked away. Tuesday came fast. The sky over Savannah was clean and bright, the kind of blue that looks sharp enough to cut. We drove in silence to Price and Hartman. Vanessa sat in the front seat, sunglasses hiding her eyes. Howard and Kyle whispered in the back. When we pulled up, Price was already waiting at the door. He greeted us politely, the way a man greets guests at a funeral. "Thank you for coming," he said. Michael was very specific about today's meeting. Vanessa smiled stiffly. "Let's just get it over with." We followed him down the hall to the same office where I'd sat days earlier. The blinds were open now, sunlight cutting across the mahogany table. On it sat 2 stacks of paper and 1 sealed envelope. Price gestured for us to sit. "I'll read the will in full as per Michael's wishes." Vanessa crossed her legs, her voice sharp. "I already know what it says. He made me executor. We discussed it." Price gave a polite nod. "Then this will simply confirm that." The first part was ordinary legal language, funeral expenses, small bequests to charities. Vanessa relaxed, slightly smiling when Price mentioned her name. "To my wife, Vanessa Hale, I leave all personal effects vehicles and the remaining balance of our joint account." Howard whispered, "See? Just like we said." Then Price turned a page. His tone shifted just enough for me to notice. "There is, however, a separate addendum to this document filed 3 months before Michael's death." Vanessa straightened. "Addendum what?" "Addendum." Price continued, calm and precise. "It concerns the ownership and future management of the Hale Family Trust, which includes the Savannah property and associated investments." Kyle frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," Price said, looking directly at Vanessa, "that all primary assets remain under the control of the trust. Upon Michael Hale's passing, management reverts to the designated trustee, Richard L. Hale." The room went still. Vanessa blinked. "That's impossible. There's no trust." "Michael never mentioned." "There is," Price said quietly, sliding the document across the table. "He created it 6 years ago. You co-signed the marital disclosure at the time. It's filed with the court." Her hands trembled as she scanned the page. "No. He wouldn't do that to me." Howard leaned forward, his voice rough. "This has to be some kind of trick." Price didn't flinch. "I assure you it's quite real. I personally witnessed his signature." Vanessa slammed her hand on the table. "He left me this house," he said. "He said—" Price interrupted gently that the house was part of his family's legacy. He wanted it protected, not sold or rebranded. Her face reddened. "This is unbelievable. I'll contest it." "You're free to," Price said, "though you might remember the pre-nuptial agreement you signed. It includes a clause that nullifies your claim to any Hale family assets in the event of financial misconduct." Her eyes widened. "Financial misconduct." Price opened a second folder. "Unauthorized transfers totaling $48,000 from your joint account to Hale Wellness, LLC." all within 3 days before his accident. Kyle cursed under his breath. Howard went pale. Vanessa's voice broke. "You can't prove that was me?" Price tilted his head slightly. "Actually, I can." Michael collected the documentation himself. The silence that followed was heavier than any thunder I'd ever heard. I looked at Vanessa, her jaw tight, her pulse fluttering at her throat, and felt no triumph, only the hollow relief of inevitability. She turned to me finally, eyes glassy. "You set this up? You made him?" I shook my head. "No." Michael did what he always did. He planned ahead. Her father stood abruptly. "This is outrageous. We'll go to the press if we have to." Price sighed softly. "Mr. Monroe, your daughter's recent social media activity already jeopardized her reputation. I'd advise discretion." Vanessa slumped back in her chair. "So what happens now?" Price looked at me. "Mr. Hale, as trustee, you now control the estate. You may choose to allow her to remain in the property or not." I folded my hands. "I'll think about it." Vanessa's lip curled. "You wouldn't dare." "You'd be surprised what an old man dares when he's got the law on his side," I said. For a moment, no one moved. Outside, the light shifted, throwing sharp patterns across the floor. The quiet felt almost holy. When the meeting ended, Price handed me a small packet of papers. "Copies for your records." Vanessa grabbed her bag and stormed out, her heels striking the tile like hammers. Howard followed, muttering curses. Kyle lingered long enough to glare at me before slamming the door behind him. Price turned to me. "You handled that better than most." "I'm not interested in breaking people," I said. "Just in stopping them." He nodded. "It's done then." "No," I said. "It started." On the drive home, Vanessa sat stiffly in the passenger seat, refusing to speak. The silence between us was thick electric. When we reached the house, she got out without a word and disappeared inside. I stayed in the car for a long moment, watching the light fade from the windows. "They still think they can fix this," I murmured. "They still think they can win." I picked up my phone and typed a message to Price. "Let them move first. Document everything." Then I started the engine, the sound low and steady, and smiled faintly at the road ahead. Justice had just found its footing. The glass shattered against the wall, exploding into 100 tiny stars. Vanessa stood in the middle of the living room, shaking her hair wild, her face pale with rage. "He's not taking this house from me," she shouted. "I built this life. I built this brand." Howard sat on the couch, his shirt unbuttoned and his eyes bloodshot. "Then fight back," he said. "We still have options. You've got the followers, the platform. Make him look like the villain. Turn the story around." Celia stood by the doorway, clutching her hands. "Please, Vanessa, just let it go. You're making it worse." "No," Vanessa hissed. "He's humiliating me. That old man wants to watch me crawl. I won't give him the satisfaction." Upstairs, I listened from the hallway, my cup of tea cooling in my hand. I'd expected this. People like Vanessa only understand loss when the audience is watching. That night, the first video appeared online. Vanessa sat in my old study, tears glistening perfectly under soft light. "I lost my husband," she said to the camera. "And now my father-in-law is forcing me out of our home. He's using some secret legal trick to take everything." The video spread fast. The comments came even faster. Sympathy, anger, the usual chorus of strangers defending someone they didn't know. By morning, she'd uploaded 2 more clips. Hashtags trended: "Justice for Vanessa," "Greedy father-in-law." I sat in the kitchen reading the comments on my phone as I stirred sugar into my coffee. Howard came in grinning. "Quite the storm she's stirring." Maybe you'll think twice before crossing her. I looked up. Storms blow over. Truth doesn't. He smirked. We'll see about that. At noon, 2 police officers knocked on the door. Mr. Hale, one said, polite but tired. We received a report of harassment and intimidation. Can we come in? Vanessa appeared behind them, her voice trembling just enough for performance. He's been threatening me. He's trying to force me out. I didn't argue. I simply opened the door wider. Come in, officers. Check whatever you'd like. The cameras record everything. Their brows lifted. Cameras, I pointed toward the small black dome in the corner of the ceiling. Full coverage, every hallway, audio and video, time-stamped. Vanessa froze. You can't just record people? State law says otherwise, I interrupted. When it's my property. The officers exchanged glances, then left after 10 minutes with nothing to report. As they stepped outside, one said quietly, "Looks like a misunderstanding, ma'am." Vanessa slammed the door after them and spun toward me. You think you're clever, don't you? I think Michael was clever, I said. He liked proof. That night, another video went up. This one showed Howard stumbling in the hallway, clutching his arm, while Kyle shouted, "He pushed you!" The caption read, "Elderly man attacks grieving family." It spread like wildfire. By morning, Price called. You've seen the video I have. We have the full footage. The timestamp shows Howard tripping on the rug 20 seconds before Kyle started filming. Want me to release it? Not yet, I said. Let them dig deeper. Patience, then, Price said. You really did learn from your son. Vanessa spent the next 2 days feeding the internet machine. She gave interviews to small channels, posted updates, and even went live from the mansion garden, crying about betrayal and greed. Her follower count doubled. But fame is fragile. The cracks started showing when one local journalist contacted Price for a statement. Within hours, he provided the full, unedited footage of Howard's fall time-stamped with audio. The story flipped overnight. Fake abuse video exposed. The headline read, Influencer Family Faces, Legal Action for Defamation. By afternoon, the same commenters who had called me a monster were calling her a fraud. Sponsors withdrew from her brand. Comments turned vicious. The next morning, she came storming into the kitchen, phone in hand. You leaked it, I looked up from my coffee. You leaked it yourself when you lied. Her face twisted. You won't get away with this. I'll file another claim. Then you'll need a new lawyer, I said. Yours just withdrew. She froze. What, Mr. Lucas? He sent me a copy of the withdrawal notice this morning. Apparently he doesn't represent people under investigation for falsifying evidence. She backed away pale. You're destroying me. No, I said softly. You're doing that all by yourself. Howard came in red-faced. This isn't over. You think you can hide behind paperwork? I turned to him. I don't hide behind it. I use it. That night I walked through the house while they argued upstairs. Their voices carried panic, blame, desperation. I let it wash over me like background noise. At 10, I received a message from Price Court dismissed their petition. You are reinstated as full trustee. We can execute the repossession order immediately. Tomorrow, I replied. Let them sleep one last night under my roof. Upstairs, Vanessa was still pacing. There's got to be something we can do. Kyle's voice trembled. The news is everywhere. Even Mom says we should leave before it gets worse. Celia's voice came next, small, tired. Maybe we already took enough. I turned off the lights and sat in the dark living room. Outside, the rain started again, slow and steady against the windows. They wanted to win the public, I whispered. But they forgot the law doesn't care who's trending. I finished my tea, set the cup down, and looked toward the stairs. Light still glowed under Vanessa's door. "Sleep well," I said to the empty air. "Tomorrow, the truth comes home." The house creaked softly, settling. Upstairs, someone began to cry. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled again, slow, patient, inevitable. The morning of the will execution was blindingly clear, the kind of cold savannah morning where the air felt freshly washed. 2 black sedans pulled up outside the Hale mansion at precisely 9 o'clock. Vanessa watched them from the top of the stairs, arms folded tight against her chest. Howard stood behind her, his face sagging, and Kyle hovered near the door with his phone half raised, filming as usual. I stepped out of the kitchen holding my coffee. "They're here to deliver the court order," I said evenly. "Please be civil." Vanessa's voice was flat and brittle. "You think this is over? You think you've won?" I didn't answer. The front door opened, and Price stepped in, accompanied by 2 uniformed court officers. He greeted them like old friends before turning to us. "Mrs. Hale," he said politely. "Mr. Hale, I appreciate your cooperation today." Vanessa gave a hollow laugh. "Cooperation? You came to steal what's mine?" Price smiled faintly. "No, ma'am. To return what was never yours." He placed a sealed folder on the table. The court officers stood quietly waiting. Per Judge Whitmore's ruling, Price continued. "The Hale Trust has been reaffirmed. All physical assets revert to the trustee, Mr. Richard L. Hale. That includes the mansion, all related accounts, and all residual investment portfolios." Howard barked a humorless laugh. "You can't just say that and expect us to leave." Price reached into his briefcase, withdrawing another envelope. "Michael anticipated you might feel that way." He handed it to me. "This is what we call the final document." I broke the seal carefully. Inside was a single handwritten page and a small flash drive. The handwriting was Michael's. I read aloud, my voice steady. "In the event of my death, should my wife contest the Hale Family Trust or attempt to misrepresent any of its holdings, she forfeits all spousal inheritance rights. This includes assets already dispersed under her name. My father, Richard Hale, is authorized to execute full control immediately." Vanessa's face drained of color. "That's fake." "You forged that." Price met her glare. "Actually, Mrs. Hale, we have the recording of your husband signing it." He pulled out a tablet, pressed play, and there it was, Michael alive, sitting in that very office, his voice calm and clear. "This is to protect my father," he said on the screen. "If you're watching this, Vanessa, I'm sorry you made this necessary." Vanessa staggered back, her mouth open, but soundless. Howard grabbed her arm, whispering, "Don't react." "Not here." Price turned off the recording. "Mrs. Hale, your husband was a thorough man." For a long time, no one spoke. Then Kyle muttered, "This is insane. We'll sue." "You can try," Price said softly. "But your mother signed several documents acknowledging the trust's existence. I have copies of her signature on tax forms. Contesting it would only expose the fraudulent financial transfers." Howard's jaw clenched. "You can't prove those transfers were illegal." "I don't have to," Price said. "The bank did." Vanessa finally found her voice. "You tricked me. Both of you." I met her eyes. "You tricked yourself. You thought control was the same as ownership." She shook her head, trembling. "He loved me. Michael wouldn't do this. He loved you enough to save you from yourself," I said quietly. "You just never noticed the difference." Howard cursed under his breath. "Come on, Vanessa. We're not listening to this garbage." Price handed him another sheet of paper. "Before you leave, you should know. This mansion's mortgage and tax payments were made exclusively from Michael's account, never yours. That makes this property a non-marital asset under state law. Howard tore the paper in half and threw it to the floor. You think you've beaten us, old man? I looked at him calmly. I don't need to beat anyone. The truth already did. Celia entered quietly from the hallway. She looked pale, tired. Vanessa, she whispered. Maybe it's time to stop. This isn't helping. Vanessa turned on her. Don't you dare take his side. Celia's eyes filled with tears. I'm not taking sides. I'm just tired of the lies. Vanessa spun away, pacing like a trapped animal. You don't understand. Without this house, I have nothing. Price gathered the papers and closed his briefcase. You still have your dignity, Mrs. Hale. I suggest you keep what's left of it. The court officers stepped forward, polite but firm. We'll give you 1 hour to collect your belongings. Howard lunged forward, his finger jabbing the air. You'll regret this, Hale. Maybe, I said, but I'll do it in peace. They left the room, shouting their voices, echoing up the stairs. The mansion fell into a tense quiet. Price exhaled and turned to me. It's done. They can't touch anything now. I nodded slowly. It's never really done. But it's enough. He handed me a receipt folder. The accounts will transfer this week. The trust is whole again. Michael would be proud. I looked toward the staircase where the sound of boxes being slammed carried faintly. He'd be disappointed too, I said. He always hoped she'd prove him wrong. Price studied me for a moment. You're not pressing criminal charges? I shook my head. No. She's already lost everything that mattered to her. That's punishment enough. We stood in silence for a while. When the hour was up, Vanessa came down the stairs carrying one suitcase. Her eyes were swollen, her voice gone. Howard followed with a duffel bag, glaring at me but saying nothing. At the door, she turned back once. Are you happy now? No, I said. But I'm done being silent. She hesitated, then walked out. The door closed behind them, soft as a sigh. Price watched from the window. You could have thrown them out months ago, he said. I wasn't looking to destroy them, I said. I was waiting for them to destroy themselves. He smiled faintly. You've done that. When he left, the house was quiet again. Afternoon light poured through the windows, painting the floor gold. I walked through each room, touching the walls, the furniture, the silence. Everything Michael built had come back home. I stopped in the study, staring at the empty space where Vanessa's desk had been. In the corner sat the old photograph of Michael and me, the frame slightly cracked but still standing. I picked it up, dusted it off, and set it back on the shelf. Rest easy, son, I said softly. Justice kept its promise. Outside, the sky was turning pink, the magnolia trees swaying in the evening breeze. For the first time in months, the house sounded alive again, breathing, waiting free. 3 weeks after they left the mansion was silent again. The kind of silence that didn't ache anymore, it just breathed. Morning sunlight spilled across the hardwood floors, catching on the dust motes like tiny lanterns. I sat by the window with my coffee, watching the magnolia petals drift across the lawn. For the first time in months, there were no cameras, no shouting, no rehearsed apologies. Just quiet. The kind Michael would have liked. Price called that morning. The transfers are complete, he said. The Hale Trust is now officially under your sole management. Congratulations, Richard. You did it. I didn't win anything, I said. I just got back what was already mine. He chuckled softly. Not everyone can say that and mean it. When I hung up, the silence settled again, deeper, gentler. I walked through the house barefoot, the floors cool against my skin. Every room looked different now, emptier, but lighter. Their scent was gone. The air felt clean. In the hallway, the old photo of Michael and me hung straight again. I'd fixed the cracked frame myself. Sometimes I still caught myself glancing toward the staircase, half expecting him to appear, that easy grin on his face. But only sunlight greeted me now. The local paper had moved on to another scandal. The Hale Wellness brand was finished. Vanessa's apology video barely lasted a day before disappearing. Her followers turned on her the same way they'd once defended her. She'd gone quiet since. Howard filed for bankruptcy protection. Kyle shut down his channel after the sponsors dropped him. I didn't hate them. Not anymore. Hate takes energy, and I'd spent enough of that already. One afternoon, while I was in the garden, Celia showed up at the gate. She looked smaller somehow. Her hair pulled back, her face lined with exhaustion. She carried a small box. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. I nodded. Of course. She followed me to the porch. I poured her tea, and for a while we sat in silence. "She's living in Atlanta now," Celia said finally. "A small apartment. She's not doing well." I didn't respond. The wind rustled through the magnolias. "She asked me to give you this." Celia opened the box. Inside was a letter. The handwriting was shaky, uneven. Vanessa's. I hesitated, then unfolded it. "Richard, I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say I see now what I was. I thought control was love and pride was strength. I was wrong. I'm sorry for how I treated you, for what I did to Michael's name, and for forgetting what family meant. If you can take care of his memory better than I did." I folded the letter carefully and set it back in the box. "She's trying," I said quietly. Celia nodded, her eyes wet. "Maybe too late, but yes. She's trying." We sat there until the sun dipped low, the air cooling around us. When she left, I stood at the gate and watched her car disappear down the oak-lined road. That evening, I found myself in the study again, sitting at the desk Michael once used. The same desk Vanessa had turned into her studio. The ring light she'd installed was gone, but the faint circle it had left on the wood still showed. I ran my hand over it, then opened the drawer and took out Michael's old fountain pen. I began drafting a document, nothing legal this time, just personal. The Michael Hale Foundation. The idea had been growing in me since the day I reclaimed the house, a scholarship fund for architecture students who couldn't afford tuition. Michael had believed in design as a way of healing the world. I thought it fitting that his name would build something again. Price helped me file the paperwork. Within 2 weeks, the foundation was official. A month later, the first recipient came to visit, a young woman named Emma. Her hands ink-stained, her eyes bright with ambition. She stood in the front hall looking around in awe. "This place feels peaceful," she said. "Like someone's still taking care of it." I smiled. Someone is. We walked the gardens together. She talked about her studies, about how her father had passed when she was a teenager, and how she'd almost dropped out until the scholarship letter arrived. "Your son's story inspired me," she said softly. "I want to build homes that feel like forgiveness." The words caught me off guard. I had to clear my throat before replying. "Then you're already halfway there." When she left, the house didn't feel empty. It felt purposeful again. That night I sat on the porch with a glass of bourbon. The sky streaked with the last gold of sunset. I thought about Michael, about how he'd managed to protect me even after death. I thought about Vanessa trying to rebuild whatever was left of herself. And I thought about peace, not the kind you win, but the kind you earn. The phone buzzed. It was Price again. "Everything running smoothly with the foundation, yes?" I said. "For the first time in a long while, everything's where it should be." He paused. "You know, Richard, you could have pressed charges. You had every right." "I didn't need to," I said. "Justice isn't about punishment. It's about restoration." He was quiet for a moment. "You sound like your son." Maybe he finally rubbed off on me. After the call, I stayed outside listening to the sound of the crickets and the faint hum of the river. The house behind me glowed softly through the windows, steady, warm, alive. I wrote one final line in my notebook before turning in, "Peace is louder when it's earned in silence." As I closed the book, the magnolia petals outside fluttered in the wind, scattering like snow across the porch. For the first time in a long time, I felt the kind of stillness that doesn't ask for anything in return. The house didn't just belong to me anymore. It belonged to what was left of us, the memory of a son who planned ahead and the quiet proof that patience, in the end, always finds its way home. The mornings came softer now. The house no longer woke to arguments or footsteps pounding down the hall, but to the faint creak of old wood and the hum of sunlight finding its way through the magnolia branches. I still woke early, the habit of years that wouldn't fade. But now I lingered in bed a little longer, listening to the quiet. The mansion breathed again, not as a monument or a battlefield, but as a home. Every corner held something of Michael, a blueprint pinned behind glass, a coffee stain on his old drafting table, the scent of cedar that clung to the closet upstairs. For a long time I couldn't walk those halls without feeling the ache of what was gone. Now the ache had softened into something else. Respect, maybe. Gratitude. I spent most mornings in the garden. The magnolia tree we'd planted when Michael graduated had doubled in size, its white blossoms brighter than I remembered. I trimmed the branches with care, humming the same tune he used to whistle when we worked side by side. My hands were slower these days, but steady. The bonsai on the porch had begun to lean slightly toward the light, and I smiled each time I noticed it. Growth, I thought, always finds its way, even after pruning. The world outside moved on. The papers stopped calling. The neighbors no longer stared when they passed the gate. Every so often, a letter arrived for the Michael Hale Foundation students, sending photos, thank you notes, sketches of houses they dreamed of building. I kept them all in a wooden box on the study shelf. On quiet evenings, I'd take the box down and read them aloud as though Michael were still here to hear them. One afternoon, I received a message from Emma, the first scholarship recipient. She wanted to visit again to show me her first completed design. When she arrived, she stood in the doorway, smiling shyly, holding a rolled-up plan in her hands. "It's small," she said, "but it's mine." I helped her spread the blueprint across the table. It was a simple house, 1-story wide, windows open porch. But there was something graceful about it. "You've captured something most architects forget," I said. "You left space for peace." She grinned. "You told me once that real design breathes." I wanted to build something that could exhale. For a moment I couldn't speak. She reminded me of Michael, not in her face, but in her belief that the world could still be beautiful. Before she left, she handed me a small envelope. "A copy of my first permit," she said. "I wanted you to have it. For luck." After she drove away, I pinned the permit on the wall beside Michael's photo. The two looked good together, like a continuation, not an ending. That night the air turned cool and I lit a fire in the living room. The flames cast long shadows across the floor, painting the walls in gold and amber. I poured myself a small glass of bourbon and sat in the armchair by the window, the same spot where I'd once watched storm clouds gather over this house. Now the sky was clear. I thought about all the noise this place had held, the shouting, the laughter, the lies, and how somehow it had survived it all. I thought about Vanessa wherever she was. I hoped she'd found some corner of peace too. Maybe one day she'd understand that silence doesn't always mean defeat. Sometimes it's the sound of rebuilding. As the fire settled into embers, I found myself whispering to the empty room. "You did it, son." protected us both. The words came easier now without the sting of grief. Before heading upstairs, I paused in the hallway looking at the portrait of my wife and Michael. The frame caught the light just right, making her eyes seem alive again. I touched the edge gently. "You'd like it here now," I said. "It's quiet again." The days that followed slipped into a rhythm: morning coffee on the porch, an afternoon walk through town, evenings writing notes for the foundation. Price visited once a week to drop off updates. "You've become busier than most men half your age," he teased. "I'm just trying to leave things tidy," I told him. He laughed. "You already did. The rest is just paperwork." When he left, I watched his car disappear down the long driveway the same way I'd watched Michael's years ago. Only this time, I didn't feel loss. I felt continuity. That weekend, I decided to open the West Wing again. It had been closed since the renovations Vanessa started her wellness suite, she'd called it. The room was bare now, stripped of her decor. I set up a drafting table there, an old one from the storage room, and hung a sign above the door, "Hale Design Studio." It wasn't a company. It was just a space for thought, for sketching, for remembering. Sometimes I'd sit there in the afternoon light, pencil in hand, drawing simple things: garden layouts, porch railings, small homes meant for families who still believed in each other. I wasn't designing to build. I was designing to remember how creation feels. One evening, as I packed up the sketches, I found a letter tucked inside one of Michael's old notebooks. The ink had faded, but his words were clear. "If you ever find yourself alone, Dad, fill the space with purpose, not people. Purpose lasts longer." I smiled. "You always were the wiser one," I said. The house was still. Outside, the magnolia tree swayed its blossoms, brushing against the window like soft applause. When I finally went upstairs, I left the lights on in the hallway. Just one small lamp glowing at the end, the same one I'd turned off the night Vanessa left. This time, I left it burning. Before bed, I wrote in my journal, "Peace doesn't mean nothing happens. It means nothing hurts anymore." I placed the pen down, turned off the bedside light, and listened to the quiet breathing of the house. The wind moved through the magnolias, carrying the scent of night air into the room. Somewhere deep inside that sound, I thought I heard Michael's voice, steady, calm, content. And for the first time since losing him, I slept without dreaming of storms. The night was cool, the kind that hummed with quiet instead of sound. I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and the old journal open on my lap. The pages were filled now. Notes, reflections, small lessons written over months of silence. Somewhere in the distance, the river murmured against the banks, steady as breath. The house behind me glowed softly through the windows. People said revenge was loud, dramatic, full of fire. Maybe that was true for some. But the older I got, the more I understood that real justice whispered. It arrived when no one was watching, when anger had already burned itself out. I looked out across the yard where the magnolia tree swayed. Its white blossoms had begun to fall again, scattering over the grass like snow. Each one would dry and fade by morning. But for now they gleamed in the moonlight, proof that beauty can outlive bitterness. The world had started calling what happened here a revenge story. The newspapers, the online forums, even the neighbors whispered about the father-in-law who outsmarted them all. But sitting there under the quiet hum of night, I realized it wasn't revenge I'd wanted. It was restoration. To put back what greed had broken. To breathe life into something worth keeping. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying others, it's about refusing to become like them. I opened the journal and began writing, not for anyone else, but for me. When people wrong you, I wrote, you can shout or you can listen. Anger makes noise. Truth takes notes. I smiled at that, thinking Michael would have liked it. He used to tell me that patience was just strategy in disguise. Maybe he was right. The phone buzzed beside me. It was Emma sending a photo of her first completed house. A small home by the coast, painted soft gray with white trim. The caption read, "It's finished. Thank you for believing in me." I typed back, "You did all the building yourself, kid. I just handed you the key." I could almost hear Michael laughing at that. After setting the phone down, I picked up his old fountain pen, the same one he'd used to sign those trust papers, and wrote one more line. "Revenge ends when peace starts to feel louder." I closed the journal and leaned back, letting the chair creak beneath me. The stars were faint above the trees, hidden by the soft haze of the city lights. Somewhere, a night bird called. The sound echoed through the open yard, calm and complete. I thought of Vanessa sometimes, not with anger, but with a kind of tired understanding. She had called last week, her voice small, asking if I'd mind if she visited Michael's grave. I told her she didn't need my permission. Everyone deserves a chance to make peace, even if it comes late. After the call, I realized something I hadn't before. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting what people did. It just means you stop carrying it with you everywhere you go. That was Michael's final gift to me, teaching me that strength isn't in holding on. It's in letting go without losing yourself. Inside, the clock chimed midnight. I stood stretched and walked through the house one last time before bed. Each step echoed softly, the wood warm beneath my feet. The living room smelled faintly of cedar and coffee. The walls, freshly painted, gleamed pale under the lamplight. In the hallway, I paused by the portrait of my wife and son. The firelight caught the glass, turning their faces gold. "You'd be proud," I whispered. The house is quiet again. I walked to the study. The desk lamp cast a small circle of light over the surface where Emma's blueprint still lay open. Beside it was the wooden box filled with letters from other students, the next generation building their futures with Michael's name on their scholarships. I sat for a while reading a few of them. "Your foundation gave me hope. My mom cried when I told her I got the award. I want to make buildings that feel alive." Their words filled the room with something brighter than victory. Legacy. That was the word Michael had used most. He said buildings were just temporary shelters, but legacies, those were the homes we leave behind for others. Before turning out the light, I added one more envelope to the box, a copy of my will, short and simple. It left the house to the foundation, with one instruction: keep it open. Let it stay a place where peace can live. I sealed it and placed it under the rest, feeling a strange calm settle over me. As I walked back to the porch, a soft wind moved through the magnolia leaves, whispering across the steps. The air smelled of rain, faint and sweet. I sat again, facing the horizon. "If you've ever been betrayed," I said softly, speaking to no one and everyone at once, remember, justice doesn't shout. It arrives quietly when you're ready to hear it. I let the words hang there. Maybe someone out in the world needed to hear them. Maybe someone would. Before going inside, I turned back to look at the house. Light spilled gently from the windows, touching the garden and the magnolia tree. I left one lamp burning in the hallway, the same one I'd left for Michael months ago. The wind carried the sound of chimes from the porch, clear and soft. Peace, I thought, really does make its own music. I smiled, whispered goodnight to the house, and stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing in the warmth. The magnolia petals fluttered across the yard, falling slow and silent under the moonlight. And for the first time, the quiet didn't feel empty at all.